Hey everyone, it's Jonathan here, founder of Driving Academy, and today we're going to be talking about 7 different restrictions that you can get on a CDL Class A license. So what are restrictions? It's something that you do in the CDL process. It's going to restrict you from having a fully unrestricted CDL. Now myself, I have one of these 7 restrictions, and at the end of the video, I'm going to share with you exactly which one I have to see if you are going to have the same thing or not. So the first CDL Class A restriction we're going to be talking about is a CDL L restriction, which simply means if you have this L restriction on your CDL Class A license, you cannot drive any vehicle with actual air brakes itself. So how did you get this restriction? It usually means that you never passed the air brake written exam when it came to your actual CDL permit. So how do you remove the restriction if you have it on your license already? Step number 1, go to DMV and purchase another permit. And then you're going to want to make sure you're study for the air brake written exam on the actual CDL permit itself. Step number 2 is then going to be make sure you pass a full road test again. That means pre-trip and air brakes, parking and road in a full air brake equipped vehicle. Now if you have your CDL Class A already and all you're looking to do is remove the CDL restriction, which is the L restriction, in that case you don't have to take the test in the Class A vehicle anymore. You can take the test in a Class B, which is going to make it a lot easier for you to actually pass. So if you have the L restriction and you want to remove it, you need a written test and you need to take the whole road test again in an air brake vehicle, but it can be a Class B vehicle, so you don't have to worry about the whole trailer piece itself. Need any help with that? Make sure you contact us and we can definitely help you remove that restriction. The next restriction that is very common is going to be the E restriction. So if you have an E restriction on your actual license itself, it's going to eliminate your ability to drive a manual transmission vehicle. So how did you actually get this E restriction? That means that you took the test in an actual automatic vehicle. So back in 2015 is kind of when they made this change. Before that, there was no such thing as an E restriction. And the government kind of said, hey, if we're going to be testing people in an automatic truck, they should not be able to drive a manual transmission because that's a different skill set that we are not even teaching people or testing people on. That being said, if they do take the test in automatic, they cannot drive any manuals and you'll get an E restriction. However, if you take the test in a manual transmission vehicle, then you will not get the E restriction and you can drive both automatic and manual. So now the question is, how do you actually remove the E restriction? So the easiest thing to do is actually go get another permit at your local DMV. Now you don't have to pass any extra tests or anything like that since you already have your license, but all you need is the actual permit. Once you have the permit, then you have to go to a training provider, get yourself trained on how to shift properly. If you come to our school, we can actually show you on our state-of-the-art driving simulators that look just like this right over here, and we can actually help you out with that itself. Now, once you get enough training and you know exactly how to shift and double clutch, then you can go and take the road portion of the road test again. Good news is you don't have to take the entire test again. You just have to take the road portion, which means you can take it in a tractor trailer or just a bobtail or like just a Class B vehicle that is manual, but it has to be in a manual transmission. As long as you can show the examiner that you passed in a manual transmission, following all the rules, then you pass your test, go back to DMV, and you get your new license with no E restriction on there. The next restriction we're going to be talking about is the most uncommon or the rarest restriction out there, which is the Z restriction. Now, how do you get the Z restriction? This has to do with air brakes, kind of like the L restriction that we talked about before. This means that you passed the written test at the DMV when you got your permit, the air brake test. And when you took your road test, you actually took the test in a hydraulic brake vehicle. Now, you might be thinking, well, what's the difference? If I know how to drive hydraulic brakes, I should know how to drive air brakes. The difference is, according to the government, you have to understand how to inspect an air brake vehicle, and that's a different inspection than you would do a hydraulic brake vehicle. So if you want to remove this restriction, you're going to have to make sure you update your permit and make sure you repass the air brake written test on your permit, and then you're going to have to go through the entire road test again. Now I know what you're saying, John, that's not fair. I just have to make sure I can show them how to pass the air brake section, right? Well, I don't make the rules. I'm just here to tell you what the rules are. And the rules are you have to do the full air brakes, the full pre-trip, the full parking, and driving on the road itself. Now, a loophole around that is if you already have a CDL Class A and you want to remove this restriction, all you really have to do is take the test in a Class B vehicle, which would make it a little bit easier for you, and you should be good to go to remove that restriction. And that's how you remove the Z restriction. The next restriction we're going to be talking about is the M restriction. Now, the M restriction is probably one of the most funny restrictions out there because it's kind of like a catch-22. So how do you get the M restriction? That means you're going to have a CDL Class A license. And then you went back and you upgraded by getting either a passenger and or a school bus endorsement on your actual license itself. but you probably took that test like most people do in a Class B bus or a school bus itself. So that being said, if you have a Class A with passenger endorsement, most likely would make sure that you get an M restriction. And pretty much what that means is that you'll actually not be able to drive a Class A passenger vehicle. And when you really think about it, there is no such thing in the common world about as a Class A passenger vehicle. Now, what does a Class A actually mean? That means an overall vehicle that weighs more than 26,000 pounds, that has a trailer that weighs more than 10,000 pounds. So think about a vehicle like that actually transports passengers. I don't think you can think about something like that because I've never seen one myself. Very old school, there was something like that in a few different cities around there, but like trolleys and things like that was pulled by tractors, that might be thing. But when it comes to it, even those big accordion buses, that's all one unit. Like you can't disconnect that second unit, so that means that's technically a Class B vehicle itself. That being said, the M restriction, the only way to remove that restriction is to find yourself or maybe make a Class A passenger vehicle and take the whole road test again in that vehicle, and then you will remove that restriction off your license. The next restriction we're going to be talking about is the O restriction. Now, O restriction has to do with fifth wheels. So if you have the O restriction, that's going to limit you on what you can actually drive because you cannot pretty much drive tractor trailers since all tractor trailers have fifth wheel connections. Now, how did you get this restriction? That means that you actually took the road test in a non-fifth wheel vehicle, which usually means like a dump truck with a trailer behind it, which looks like this, right? And that's usually a pinto hook connection, or maybe like a pickup truck with a trailer behind it as well. So you do have a CDL Class A license. However, you do have that O restriction simply because you did not take the test with a fifth wheel on the vehicle. Now, to remove this restriction, unfortunately, you're going to have to get your permit again and take the whole road test all over again, which means air brake and pre-trip, parking, and driving on the road. I know it's going to be a pain, but it's definitely worth it because it opens up your license to drive a whole lot more things out there in the future. The next restriction we're going to be talking about is the K restriction. And this K restriction is going to show up on your license for one reason and one reason only. That means you have a CDL license and you're under the age of 21. If this is the case, you're going to have a K restriction simply because by law, currently, you cannot transport goods and services across state lines if you're under the age of 21. There's a lot of lawmakers out there that are trying to change this rule, but as of right now, if you are under 21 and you got your CDL license, you can only work within the state that you are licensed in. That being said, how do you remove the restriction? All you gotta do is wait. And then you can go back to DMV, renew your license, and that restriction will come off of your license. Super, super simple. And the last restriction we're gonna be talking about is going to be the V restriction. Now, this V restriction has to do with medical variance restriction. So this is a unique restriction because it does not limit anything when it comes to driving. It just pretty much makes people aware that you have some type of medical condition when it comes to driving itself. Some of the most common reasons why somebody can get a V restriction on their license are going to be things like diabetes, seizures, hearing problems, and even eyesight impairment. Now, in order to get yourself a CDL license, you're going to have to show that you are healthy enough to drive a CDL vehicle, which means you have to pass a DOT physical. Now, DOT stands for Department of Transportation, and that is a major requirement needed before you can even start the process itself. So if you are worried about getting this restriction or anything like that, don't worry. If you have your DOT physical and everything checks out, you're good to go. You won't have that restriction. And then things kind of deteriorate. They will give you that V restriction just to make sure that people are aware of what's going on with your medical condition. That's why you always have to take care of your body. You only got one of them, at least in this life, as some people believe. You come back and maybe you have another one. But let's take care of the one that you got today. You have no issues at all, and you won't have any restrictions moving forward there. So you got to the end of the video and you went through all the restrictions, and now you get to see exactly which restriction I actually have on my license. So I currently have the M restriction. The M restriction restricts me from driving a Class A vehicle that has passengers because, like I said, there's no such thing. If you were thinking about it, I actually have my Class A license, I got my passenger endorsement, I got my tanker endorsement, I don't have my hazmat, and I also have my doubles and triples endorsement, so I can drive a lot of different things. But because I'm not actively driving hazardous material, I don't really have that. And because I did take the passenger vehicle in actual bus itself when I took the test, I am going to have that M restriction. So if you got that right, make sure you put in the comments below saying, yo, I win. I knew he got the M restriction. And if you have an M restriction too, we're part of the same family. So if you are looking to get your CDL license, whether you have a restriction now or you don't have your CDL at all, definitely check out our website, cdldrivingacademy.com. Again, cdldrivingacademy.com, and we're definitely here to help you out. Thanks. Have a great day. Hey, thank you so much for watching this video. If you like it, make sure you hit that like button. Also, subscribe to our channel. It's really going to help us out. Click on that button. And if you want to continue yourself on your road to freedom, here's more videos to watch. There's endless amounts. Hopefully we get to see each other one day very soon. Thanks.